everyone, Rich Carlton here. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. We're here at fmtraining.tv where awesome things happen just about every day. It's really kind of cool. I'm going to go to the website. I've got my, see, for those of you who haven't seen this, this is my remote control button over here. And actually, I got it fixed, so it's actually working better now. If you can see the little remote control button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the button for fmtraining.tv. Is it on here? Live training schedule. Here we go. So this is the upcoming schedule at FM Training TV. You come down here and see the live broadcast schedule. Today's going to be some custom function shenanigans with Jake Scheele. For those of you, I will let Christian introduce Jake here momentarily. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, looks like Nick is doing some Big Mac attack. It looks like a Big Mac, if I'm not mistaken, hamburger. So there'll be some hamburger menu action. Safe for work, right? Hopefully it'll be safe for work. Then Christian will be back on Friday. If I can be around to help with that, Christian, I will. And then really, really big announcement starting Monday. Actually, Monday's a holiday, right, Margaret? Monday's a holiday?
Yes, it is indeed a holiday. So it is President's Day.
Okay, so that is the front end of our website, or the front end of our presence. It's all driven by FileMaker. We eat our own dog food here. Right, so so this is the FileMaker backend. Leland will be providing JavaScript action training day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. So that's only 4 days that week because we got presidential. A week from today is at least a U.S. national holiday. Then the next week is JavaScript 102. It's like the second week of JavaScript action. It's pretty awesome. Leland Long will be banging away. It's all sorts of jQuery awesomeness. So it's going to be, I think, JavaScript first and kind of FileMaker kind of second a little bit. Pretty wild stuff. And so you're going to get 2 weeks of free JavaScript training. And then there's going to be a paid follow-on piece to that. We're going to send out the official invites on this stuff. If people want to pay to get that, obviously, Jake, since you work for the company, you can watch that for free. But everyone else has to kick in and contribute a little bit. And so if you want to help support the channel, I want to ask all of you to make sure that you go to fmtrain.tv, check out the bundles package button right here. That's where you purchase our training in a bundle. The reason is we don't sell training individually anymore because we have so many courses. Actually, if you look at all the courses, there's all the legacy courses in there too. So it's quite a bit of stuff. So we have courses literally go all the way back to FileMaker 14 that are available. If you buy the bundle, we give you all those things. If you want to support the channel, keep the lights on, spend a couple bucks. I guarantee we'll make it worth your while, okay? Everyone here hopefully enjoys this. I enjoy doing it. Hopefully you enjoy watching it. So let's kind of pivot to today's conversation. So today is Christian Olson and Jake Scheele. I'm going to stop sharing my screen briefly here. Margaret, you go full screen. So yeah, so we got Christian Olson and Jake. So Christian Olson is the director kind of our coaching services, but he kind of manages about half the engineers in the company one way or the other. And so he is here to introduce Jake. And Jake apparently was a former sanitary engineer. That's a fancy word for a guy who rides on a dump truck, who empties the trash. And then we felt sorry for him, so we gave him a job. So Christian, would you like to explain how we got to where we are with him?
I'll describe it slightly different. Jake was and is one of my clients. So I actually do coaching with Jake. He likes to bring me really difficult and interesting problems to solve. But I noticed that Jake has, and you guys have seen him on the stream before, Jake's really talented. I always say Jake's going to pass me up as he gets more experience. So we were kind of overflowing with work. And I said, you know what, Jake, would you want to take on a couple small projects? And so now he's actually officially on the RCC team on the side. He's still got his main job too. So he's got some cool stuff that he's been bringing.
The main gig is like one of those guys that moves the trash. You know, like the hand comes out, grabs a trash can, and it dumps it in the truck.
That's what it feels like sometimes, yeah.
I know your boss is actually, your boss from your other job is watching this. You're in deep, you're going to have to beep that out, Mark, deep doo-doo, right? So, yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going to let you folks go at it. Then
Jake showed us, Jake was showing off. So we have a morning meeting that we do with my team and a lot of the RCC engineers. And Jake always comes and he shows off some cool stuff. And I was like, you know, Jake, as awesome as this is to show us, you really should do a presentation on this and kind of share with the rest of the community. And so that's what kind of kicked us off. But Jake, why don't you take it from here and show us what you got?
Yeah, of course. So I've been doing FileMaker development for coming on 5 years now. I work with a small family company that my parents own. We're based just out of the Twin Cities, Minnesota. And like Christian said, I've been getting coaching from RC for several years now and been working with them now for like 4 months doing coaching and been really loving it so far. But these are some custom functions that throughout my years of development, most of these functions I put together. A handful of them I didn't, and they're all marked as so. There's some good comments on most of them, if not all. But basically, I put together this custom function library of different functions that I've used throughout the years that have helped me out, that makes life easier. And some that do some pretty cool things, some that are a little bit simpler. And if you haven't used custom functions much, it's a good introduction to them to kind of see what they do and the different things you can accomplish with them. And yeah, that's what I've got today. So this is the file that everyone's going to be getting today. Right now, it's got a little filter on the top to filter out all different categories that I kind of put together for the custom functions. But we've got 76 total functions in here. One cool feature is that you can install the custom functions directly from right here. Well, not fully install them, but at least copy them. So every function has the copy function button, or you can go over on the left side and select. So we can select all or just select a few. And then we've got copy selected functions that shows up. And whenever we copy one or copy many, it's going to copy it directly to our clipboard. That part does require base elements to work. It does have an error that'll pop up if you try to copy it and don't have base elements installed. But that puts them right on your clipboard. So if I go into custom functions and hit paste, there are the ones that I selected, and you can do that for any of the functions that are here in the file. So I'm going to go through these, but to make it a little easier, I'm going to go one section at a time, kind of starting with the easier functions and moving down to trickier ones. So our starting section I've got is what I've called shorthand functions. They basically take existing things in FileMaker that aren't always the easiest to remember and just makes it something easier to remember. So our first ones I've got are browse mode and find mode. And it's just easier to remember than get window mode equals 1. I'll use these usually for hide conditions. So you know how sometimes I'll often want to hide this toolbar from my users in FileMaker and replicate its functionality in my own header toolbar or in the top navigation. So if you take an object and hide when browse mode, hidden in browse mode, I go into find mode, there it shows up again. So that can be good for like putting a button that says cancel find or begin find or things like that. I also use that sometimes in scripting. Yep. Is card and is form view and is list view are some pretty similar ones. So I've got comments on just about every single custom function. So the purpose of is card, it's going to return true if the current window is card style. So I'll use that in scripting. Sometimes you can't open up a card window if you're already on a card window. So if I'm running a script that opens a card, I'll have some validation that checks to say if is card, show custom dialog. Hey, you need to close the window first, or maybe handle the script differently.
And Jake, I'm guessing that you do, like I do these in some of my add-ons, because someone might go, well, why not just do if get window style equal 3-1 every time you want to do that? And I'm guessing these just save you a little bit of mental load, that as you're going through, you can just ask, is this a card? Is it form view really quickly and easily? It's that your kind of main purpose there?
Yep. Yeah. It's just, especially for these shorthand functions, it's just, I'm not going to remember, that layout view state equals 0 every single time I want to know if I'm looking at a form or not. I'll remember is form view. And that's the whole purpose of those.
Yeah, I know they seem really simple, but I love that for having a I have a touch.
Well, and I don't forget get current date. I've got a very simple one. I won't forget get current date, but 5 characters is a lot easier to type. Just the word today, and that's a really simple one that I found to be pretty useful. Is full access is another one, especially since when you're checking to see if you're full access, you need to wrap those brackets around it every time. And I know newer developers will forget. I know when I first started, I forgot those brackets half the time when I was trying to check if something was full access. So then I'll hide an object if not is full access. So not.
Well, I kind of like these too because it's unlikely that the results for these or the calculations will change. But if you wanted to change your logic, suddenly you can make it true for the entire application. So if whatever you define as full access changes, you just have to update your calculation, your custom function versus finding every single place that references it.
Yep, I'll use this often if I'm doing like I'm testing on a live file and I'm working with a script that people are still using regularly. I'll add an if statement that says if is full access, do this different action, else do what you normally do. And then when I am running it or another developer that is full access is running it, it'll do my testing action. Whereas when everyone else who's a standard user is running it, it won't do that. That is pretty much the shorthand ones. Let's go into our system custom functions is my next section. Also these are kind of similar to shorthand functions as well. So device appearance, this one is more recent. It wasn't available until more recently when we got the get system appearance function. On Mac or iOS, you're going to get dark aqua or dark is what's returned, or dark aqua is what's returned, but we just want the word dark. So it returns dark or light based on if you're in dark mode or light mode. Is server is a nice one. So there was another one that's in the files that goes hand in hand really well with is server. So is server will return true if it is evaluated by a script that's being run on the server, if that makes sense. So sometimes I will have a script that I run locally and the beginning of the script runs itself on the server, but you also want to make sure you're not calling it again on the server. So I'll usually do, I've got just real quick, is hosted file is another custom function that returns true if the file is hosted on the server. So if I run a script, I can have an if statement that says if is hosted file and not is server. So not is server will only return true when it's being run locally. So I click a button.
I'm stealing this one from you. I was curious if there was a function
I do it all the time.
That out.
It's such a great method. So I click a button that runs a script. And the beginning of that script at the very top, it's an if statement. If is hosted file and not is server, perform script on server, and then it runs itself. And you have to have that not is server portion, or it will repeatedly call itself in a loop and crash your server. So that's an important thing to note in there. You definitely need that piece in the if statement, but I've used that quite a bit and it's pretty cool. Back into the system ones. So there's our is server. All of my platform is just the get system platform. It's easier to remember. I have only, David, sorry, I'm seeing your post in Discord. I have only posted one of my custom functions on Brian Dunning in the past, maybe two. I haven't shared many of them until today. Just been using them. So these platform are again pretty simple ones. It's easier to remember that than get system platform equals 1 or 4. So I'll use these in scripts and if statements if I want to handle something differently on a certain device, or maybe open the screen size a different way when I'm running a script, or in the startup script can be very useful to navigate a user to a certain layout. So after system, I've got field functions.
I really like that you added this filter. I didn't see this when you were first showing it off, but there's so much in here.
There's
sometimes
so many
it's
of
overwhelming.
Them. Yeah,
to see what you have. So I kind of like that you can break it down into these bite-sized pieces.
Thank you. I also tried to put in required functions. I should have mentioned this at the beginning. Some of these functions do require other functions. If you try to install one without installing the ones that are listed in the required functions, they aren't going to work. So make sure you take note of that when you're trying to copy any of these into your solutions. I've never loved my naming convention that I have here, but I know what it means. Get field name.
And so, Jake, real quick,
TO.
for the
Yep,
required functions, is that just a returned limited text list? So if we wanted to add one and it had a requirements, how would we properly configure that there for it to check?
So get field repetition count requires get field table occurrence and get field name without TO. So if you wanted to install that, you would also need to grab both of these.
Or sorry, what I meant is when
isn't
you're filling out that field right there, is that just a return limited list and you're just
Yes.
typing them out the way that they're spelled? Okay.
Yes.
So if you change the name of the function somewhere else, you need to go and update that there so that it knows to check for it. Okay.
Correct. At least when you're importing them. I mean, if you import all of these successfully and then you update them in your files, they'll update each other. But yes, that's correct. So the get field name without TO, this one and get field table occurrence basically are two sides of the same coin. It's basically you pass in a field name, it will return. I also have some examples down here for a bunch of them. I also should have brought this up a little earlier, but you can do a test case that runs the function and returns the results of the function right there. So get field table occurrence, when you pass in a field name, it will return basically everything to the right side of the two colons of the field name. It'll take out the table context and just give you the name of the field. And it does the opposite of get field name without TO. It'll just return, oh, I'm saying them backwards. This one will return just the TO, and this one will return just the name of the field. Get field repetition count is a little bit more of a tricky field or a tricky function. You don't necessarily need to understand what's going on here. I think this is a function that should be native to FileMaker. You pass in the name of a field and it will return a number of how many repetitions that field has. So I made a test field with reps, and I gave it 3 reps, and I can go in here and change it to 4 reps. And run it again, and now we got 4. So it's just a SQL query that checks the FileMaker fields table. I figured out how to do this from the FileMaker SQL reference, which is really cool. If you guys haven't checked that out and know a thing or two about SQL, there's some really cool things you can get there. Get field type. I actually got this initially from Nick Hunter's sort method, how to get this information, and just bundled it into a custom function. So it'll just return the type of field for a field name you pass in, text, number, timestamp, etc. Is valid field will return a Boolean of true or false, whether or not you give it a valid field name. So I threw in a test one of custom functions type. It gave me true. I put an extra E in. I did an intentional typo, and it returned false.
Jake, real quick, have you showed us how you make those examples? I see that you're typing in the parameters, but that seems like a really neat use here. Do you just add
so we could find one that's a little more. Here, we could even just go with, here, let me just go to this next section here. Number would be a little easier to show you. So it's a portal of examples, and you can go in and select an existing one, and you put in the parameters and delimitate the parameters, and it will basically run this. It uses the evaluate function in FileMaker to pass these as parameters into this custom function and display it and puts the results into this field. It's just an evaluate.
I'm actually happy just to have all the custom functions are like bonuses now, but even just
there's examples.
Files seems really useful.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be pretty cool to get some senior RC engineers together and maybe get the best custom functions that we have out there and have a hosted library where we can all get them and have the most up-to-date versions and new ones that we make. And
speaking of which, we kind of have 2 questions.
Yeah, what's up?
So we have the first one. Do you post your functions at Brian Dunning? Kind of related.
I did see that. I addressed it earlier, but I can say again.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh no, that's okay. I've only posted like 2 on Brian Dunning before. I have not posted most of these. This is the first time they're kind of getting out there.
No, that's my bad. I was busy monitoring Boxcast having temperamental, not listening to what you were saying.
Oh, and that's okay.
In that case, did you get the other question? Do you use get field name without TO with SQL?
Yes, I do. I do. I also have, oh, where are they? They're probably in the field section. Where are they? Text, SQL. There they are. SQL field, SQL table. I do use them with the SQL. The only thing that this does, the only thing I do in addition to using them with SQL is I put the quote function around it, the native FileMaker quote function. That's the only additional thing to the get field name without TO that I do to make it work. And the SQL field custom function I'll show later just has a small difference, and I tried to make it work if you pass the field name in too, but it's picky about context.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question.
So Ken Art just asked a good question that I am happy you brought up. Christian actually showed me the art of what you have asked. He said he's curious about the thinking behind putting the semicolons at the beginning of the lines in these functions. So here's a great example of that. All of my semicolons are at the beginning. So Christian showed me that when I first started coaching with him. I had them all, like normal, you would have them at the end. And not have them at the beginning. A couple benefits to having them at the beginning. So for one, you can shuffle them around. If you have the last one in the list doesn't have a semicolon at the end. So if you add something later on, add a new thing, it's going to get mad at you because there's not a semicolon at the end that you didn't add there. Or maybe you even added more than one thing and you put your semicolon at the end and then you're doing thing 5 and then it's still not, you didn't put one there. Basically, by having it at the beginning, you can shuffle things around without any problem, without it yelling at you about your semicolon placement. I like the readability a lot better. You will make sure that you don't forget any semicolons. Christian, anything to add to that?
Yeah, two things. First, I do want to at least give a shout out. He's not watching, but it was another senior engineer helping me years ago that showed me this, and it's kind of counterintuitive. But like Jake said, it's easy to move things around. I think the readability is great, and then I don't know if you showed it already, but the fact that you can comment a line out really easily.
Yes.
But they're all standardized because the normal way you do it, like Jake said, you don't have a semicolon off the last one, you don't have one on the first one. It's just, so as you go to move things around or you want to comment it out, it's a little trickier. So it took me a little adjusting to writing things like this. And anytime I start coaching with people now, I tend to show this to them. It doesn't mean that you guys have to use it, but it's something that the more I've used it, the more I like it. And it's just my standard now.
All right, so let's go on to these number fields. Let me double check. I think I went through most of these. Field type is valid field. Yep. Okay. So currency, one more thing to add. These little E's, that means I wrote it. And everything that doesn't have an E on the side here, I did not write. Most of them I got from Brian Dunning and linked as many of them as I could find the links to. There were some that I got from some files. They do all have notes of who wrote them, their websites and such. So currency I've used a bit. It basically just takes a number and makes it look pretty. I've seen a lot of people using this currency function. It's the most common currency custom function that I've seen out there. It works pretty great. It does have it has quite a few parameters in it. You can get pretty detailed with what you want it to display. It's nice since you can't always format a field. Or you can format a field, you can't format a calculation specifically with currency typically. So I found that to be very helpful. Currency short is one that I actually wrote for a client fairly recently. If you have a number greater than 1,000, it will format it to look pretty. So I've got some examples of 1.1 million, 1.1 M, 250K, 250,000, and that goes all the way up to 999 billion. It doesn't handle anything if I throw another digit in there. Anything over 1 trillion, it doesn't like. So that's in the instance we used it, we put them in a portal where there wasn't room to put that massive dollar amount. So that just made these larger amounts where they don't necessarily need to see the detail.
Oh, interesting. And you do a lot of iOS development. I know with my clients, whenever we have the currency thing, something we're constantly coming back to, because like my clients will tell me we will never have a 6-figure number. And then one day they have a really nice estimate and they do. And suddenly we have to make the field longer But
Yep.
since they're on iPads, there's not a lot of space for it. That's actually pretty nifty.
Ken said need to add the trillion so RC can use it for their business revenue.
If only.
So
Maybe
max value.
there is a demo
Um,
file, and I'm getting the link. So sorry, keep going, Jake.
That's okay. This is another simple one that just returns the greatest number in a list. Whenever you pass it a carriage return delimited list of numbers, it'll give you the biggest number. Number range, I use this. This is a cool, you can use two parameters in conjunction. Get values and number range. So number range will return a carriage return delimited list of all of the numbers between two other numbers. So if I pass in the two parameters of 2 and 5, I'll probably throw that in my example. I'll do 2 and 5 and run that as a test. I get 2, 3, 4, 5 as a return delimited list. So if I'm writing a script and it might have 2 parameters, it might have 7 parameters. I don't know. I know that the first parameter is the contact ID, and the second parameter is a carriage return delimited list of tags that I want to add to the contact, for just throwing an example out of nowhere. And I wanted to grab, maybe there's 6 tags, maybe there's 17, maybe there's 2. You can do, I'll do this in the data viewer actually, just to kind of show how you would do that. So parameter value is another custom function I apparently do not have installed onto this. So you could do get value, get script parameter 1 to get the first value of your script parameter. But what if I want to get values 2 through however many there are? Then I could do number range, and the number range that I want to get is from the second script parameter to the number of total values, value count of get script parameter. So for example, if there were 6 total script parameters that you passed, you would be grabbing values 2 through 6. If there were 10 that were passed, you're grabbing values 2 through 10. And then one little thing on here is get values. It's another custom function that's very similar to get value. You just pass in. So it's the combination of get values and number range. And that's a very useful little technique I've used before. So I hope I explained that well. If there are any questions, feel free. So actually,
Currently, I'm going to remind YouTube and Twitch. So I'm also watching you guys. If you guys have questions, please ask them. Okay, you're good to go.
cool. So uncategorized ones that I have. So we've got a few get functions that are going to be very similar. Get layout ID, get layout name. For those who don't know, FileMaker tables, layouts, and scripts all have internal IDs that aren't immediately visible to most people. So I've got the Monkey Bread plugin installed, so I can show IDs. These are the field IDs. You can go to tables and see the table IDs, and these are the internal FileMaker IDs. If we change the names of these tables, or the names of scripts or the names of layouts, those names can change. IDs will never change. So we can, with these custom functions, pass in a layout name and it will return the layout ID, and vice versa. Pass in a layout ID, it'll return the layout name. Same thing for a table. And we've got the same thing for scripts. Those are just in the scripts filter type. And then is valid layout and is valid layout ID will return true. That's a Boolean. If you pass in a layout name that is contained in your current file, it'll return true. So if I'm calculating the name of a layout to navigate to, I'll have a validation check to say if not is valid layout, whatever layout I'm trying to navigate to, exit the script and don't continue on going to the, failing to go to the layout. is valid table and is valid table occurrence. I don't use those ones very often. But same concept. They just return true or false if you pass in a valid table name from your solution or a valid table occurrence name. And then last one's in the uncategorized, set variable and set global variable. These can be used a lot of different ways, but basically they just do kind of what they say. They set a variable or a global variable. They've got two parameters of what the variable name is. Don't pass any $ into it. Just the text of what you want so
those ones seem really simple, but I can't tell you how useful they are. They're in every single add-on I build, basically, to just dynamically be able to create variables. Most of you have maybe learned about the let trick that does it, but just having the custom function on hand for it is extremely useful.
Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of use for it. All right, so that gets us through the sections of what I consider to be easier functions. I've got script and text functions that I put in the medium section. So see what we got. I'm going to start at the bottom and move up with these ones. So is valid script and is valid script ID, very similar to those uncategorized ones we were just seeing. This will return true if you pass a valid script name. So I passed in, we've got a script called copy function. I tested that. It returned true. I typoed. It returned false. Get script name and get script ID. You pass in the script name, it will return the ID, and vice versa. Get error description. I have seen other versions of this before. I wish I was able to put the credit in. I could probably go still look it up, but it wouldn't be in the version we sent out, unfortunately. But it's basically, I just copy pasted the list of error codes and substituted out the semicolons in there. So I updated this. I checked it the other day too. The most recent version of FileMaker with all their error codes, you pass in an error number, it will return the English version of the error number and what actually went wrong with and this is for when you run like get last error. So when you're running a script and you do get last error, to return the error from the last script step that ran.
That's another really useful one. I do happen to know that some other RC engineers have written their own, because I got tired of having to go look these up. Nick's got his Launchpad solution as a table where you can make a relationship to get them, but the custom function is really nice because you're constantly like, what is this? So just to have it baked in, especially if you do want to have a dialogue to the user.
So, I guess I don't actually have it. So I have it baked into another custom function whenever I'm doing my scripts, capture error. So these three, I've waited to do these until the end here because they're all connected to each other, and you can do some really cool things with these three custom functions. So capture error, we're going to start with. Basically, I use this whenever I'm writing scripts, and what this does is it sets two variables every time you run this capture error. It'll capture a variable for the last error that ran, and then it will add that last error message to a list of all the errors that have run during this current script you're running. So if I go into a script, I hope I have one in here that I needed to put in the documenting for. I'm not capturing any errors there. Might just need to open up one of my scripts in a different file. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So, and then basically this will capture all of the errors that a script encounters that you decide to log into a variable. And then this will capture all of those variables into a global variable. So
Can you go back over that? I feel like
I'm definitely gonna go over it like 3 times because it's a weird one. But it's very cool what you can accomplish with it. So I've got just an example script. So say I wanted to log this script. I'm gonna look for any capture errors that I have. And of course I didn't put any in. Okay, there's one. So I've got a script. First thing I do in most scripts that I write is run this little init, and I just do the set variable It does not matter what you name the variable. This custom function returns nothing, but what it does is sets another variable. So capture script header, all that one does is capture the current time so that you know how long the script is running is what I was going for there. Then I've got one capture error here, and I often put capture errors after perform finds. So I am running through the script, I perform a find, and then I'm going to set a variable. I usually call it E. Again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to run the custom function capture error. There is an optional parameter you can pass in. That is the line number. So the perform find script step is at line number 25. So I would pass in a 25 there. If I'm still writing a script, I'll usually leave that blank since those usually get shuffled around quite a bit anyway, and I go through and do it last. And then by running the capture error function, it will set two variables. It's going to set the error variable, which is a list of all the errors this script has run into. I've only run it once so far in this script, so it's only going to have one error in it. But say you've got a longer, more complicated script and you're capturing 5, 6, 15, 30 different things that could go wrong, you then have this report of, you know, this got past this point, it got past this point, and then it failed at line 41 because my find didn't have any results or whatever. But that capture error will return, since I passed in line 25, it will return the error number. So let's say it performed that find and it got an error 401, no records found. It would tell me error 401 at line 25, no records match this request. And that would get added to my list of errors that were captured during this script that was run. Now, capturing the errors during the script in a variable is cool, but then once you're done for the day, once you're done running that script, that variable is gone. So usually I'll do a capture script details JSON and pass in the error variable. And what capture script details JSON does is captures a bunch of information about the current script that is running. It gets the script name, the parameters that were passed, how long it took that script to run. So how many milliseconds to seconds to minutes it took for that script to run. And then it'll take the script results. So whatever you pass as a parameter, I'll usually pass in that error variable. Whatever you pass as a parameter will get stored as the script results. And then you can go back and look at those errors. So if I, for example, go in and look at the scripts I have run today, looks like I've only run one script so far when I copied those functions earlier. And this is the script that I ran earlier. The name of the script, how long it took to run, 43 milliseconds in this case. The ID, any parameters I passed to it. And if I go to a file that I've had open longer, I probably get, you know. So there's a little script history of what I've run in a different file that I currently have open. I clocked out before I started streaming on my Edimate stuff. And then you can go further with that. And so this is beyond the custom functions, but I can show you guys really quick.
Jake, before we go too much further, can you take a peek at Discord? So David Angel is asking, you know, you're capturing error records versus using get last error.
So that custom function does use get last error. Sorry. But yeah, that custom function does use get last error. It just also puts in the error description. So get last error will only return the number. So if you do perform find and then do get last error, it will return 401. So it also does last error. Here, let me pull up that script again. And sorry, I knew this part would be one of the more complicated parts of the stream with these functions. They're little trickier ones, and
well, and you show them to me, and I'm like, this is really cool. But since I didn't write it, it's still sometimes a little overwhelming. I'm sure as people feel when I try to describe my add-ons, like it makes sense up here, but trying to get that across, like the initialize that you have, and the fact you're storing all this stuff in the JSON. from a 1,000-foot view, it looks really cool. But even I'm kind of like, how do I go in and actually use this? But I love the idea that you're storing all that info and you have this mechanism to just rinse and repeat all over the place.
This might make a little bit more sense. So what I just wrote here, I'm gonna kind of isolate that a little bit. In this little chunk, I commented out what I normally do, which is my custom function. Before I had the custom function, this is what I was doing. I was capturing the last error, and then I was storing that last error in a list of all of the other errors that I've run into in this script and appending that to the list of existing errors. And that is basically all that this custom function does, is exactly these two steps right here.
And if I could jump in on this, because this is where I think this is really something useful to me, is when you're doing something, especially PSOS, you might encounter several different errors. Some errors are like showstoppers. You got to exit and tell the user. Other ones you might just accumulate, like you said, in a list. And I've gone back and forth in the areas of like, how do I accumulate this list and what do I do with the information? And it seems like you've built kind of like a tool that you just put into each one and a method or a process, if you will, for how you deal with that.
Yes. And do I have that open? Yes. Okay. So one thing, a tool that I built with this is this is in one of my Edimate files. These are sessions. So this is my current login. I logged in, earlier today at 2:41. And every time you log in, I have a table and it creates a new record in that sessions table and stores the device you logged in on. And then on last window close, so you know how we have all of those script results for all the scripts that I've run, I store them in a global variable. So on last window close, I take that global variable and stick them in a field on the sessions. And then
so you're just baking in this incredible audit log throughout your solutions all over the place.
And this is in addition to the audit log, but it's like a developer audit log because it handles my scripting. It handles whenever a server-side script runs. We can actually never run server-side scripts on. There's some. So I could see the results of those server-side scripts. None of these actually had any errors, but you could see all the scripts that ran during that session. So what did the server do during that time? What did this user do when they were logged in? And then you can see more details. So there's the parameters that were passed to this script, the results. And I found a lot of use from this little sessions tool. I've thought about making
I think it's something so many of us have want, but you've figured out kind of an infrastructure so that you can put that into place. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but it doesn't even seem to add too much overhead. Or do you have an issue if they have a long session and that JSON array gets long?
I have yet to have an issue with it. And I've been logged in sometimes for like 3 days and doing a lot of testing. And
but I'm sure others out there who have helped like clients who say something doesn't work or like, I wish I could see everything that person did.
Yep. Well, and then I went into the users section and then you can just add a little tab for, I don't know if I have it in this file, probably not. Yeah, no, I don't. But you can have a tab for their sessions. See every time they logged in, how long they were logged in for, what device they were on, and why not give that to the client? Let them see that information. They get accountability for their users. Okay, so I've got like 10 minutes left. Let's see if I can knock these last
and all of that under the script filter, the initialize and the grabbing the errors.
That was all under the script filter. Yep, it was all under scripts. So I'm gonna move on to text. See if we can knock out these last custom functions. So some of these, in case I don't go through them all, most of these are documented pretty well. You can kind of figure out what's going on here. Add remove list items, not one that I wrote. Pretty much will add or remove values from a list. If it's already in the list, it'll take it out. If it's not in the list, it will add them. I use this actually for checking boxes to add or remove it from the list. Camel case to space. You pass in a text string and it will put spaces in between wherever there are uppercase characters. So camel case to space. I found that one to be pretty useful. Contains value is similar to pattern count, but is more accurate than pattern count. So pattern count won't return true. Pattern count will return true for similar matches. So if you've got like a return delimited list and you've got like, I can't think of a good example right now. Word and words, both of them will return true, and you only want word because it's an exact match. If I'm looking for the word, yeah, that was a bad example, but date translate. This is one that I wrote that I've got some examples here. I use it for like date pickers, where if I want to grab the first day of this month, the first day of this year, the first day of this quarter or last quarter. And I've got some examples of what you can pass in here. So you just pass in text as the parameter. So I would pass in the words first of quarter, and it will return the first of this year's quarter, the first of the month, the last day of this week. Those can be useful rather than figuring out which day Sunday is and adding however many days. Empty this or that. That is a simple one. I use it. A good example of this is I want to display the company name only if the company name has something in it. Else show me the last name of a contact. I guess this is a bad one to pass an example in, but I'll pass like 2 different fields in there and it'll only return the one that actually has a value in it. Fields append. I use that for like my database definitions or for some calculations. A good example is that you could put in Joe Smith with a space, and so I'll put in the first name field and the last name field, and it'll append in that space. Or if I do last name field, first name field, but instead of a space, I do comma space. And that's usually what I'll do with that. Get date range value.
Hey Jake, real quick,
yeah.
I think there's a lot of interest on some of that error stuff you were doing. I know you're a little short on time, but take a look at M. Johnson's question in Discord, and I can read it to you if that's helpful too, because I think it's a really good one, because I feel similarly where maybe Jake
anyway for the other.
Yeah, maybe Jake. I'll go ahead and take care of Margaret. Maybe Jake can do something with a test file by showing those capture error functions, etc. So maybe people that do not get it still can see from him walking through it step by step. Might be useful for those who like that and want to do something like that. So I'm not trying to distract you. I know we're a little short on time. Yeah. Is that something that you could do, or is that a little bit hard on the spot?
I mean, I can't promise any time on when I would be able to share that, but I definitely could see that being something that would be fun and useful. It's a really
good. And if you're watching Discord,
really
there's buzzing. I would add to the buzz on that too, because conceptually I follow what you're doing, but I feel like seeing it in more action would help me, because I'd like to use it myself.
I almost feel like I shouldn't have thrown it in today's live stream to save on time, because it's like you guys have said, it deserves its own stream. It's got.
Well, maybe you can talk to Margaret, and if you're real nice.
I am always enthusiastic about convincing people to come join us on our streams.
Hey, I've got a time clock. It's okay.
So yes, if you want to come back maybe on that, because there seems to be a lot of buzz on that. So I don't want to distract people who are showing us. But M. Johnson, really good question there. Stu, Ken, Scheele, I think that we'll probably have to rope Jake back awesome. In here to go into deeper detail on that one, because I feel like I could ask you questions about it just for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely do that in the future. That'd be a lot of fun. So I'm going to try to knock through these last text ones in the next 2 minutes, and then hopefully we could knock out.
You're doing great. I told you I was going to knock you off the rails today, so that was my...
Get date range value is a nice one I threw together. So whenever you perform a find in FileMaker, you've got 1-1-2022 ... 12/31/22, and you basically pass in, I've got my date range, I want the start. I've got my date range, I want the end, and it will return whichever one you asked for. So pretty simple one there. Get values. I went over this a little bit earlier. It's very similar to get value, except instead of the value number that you want, it wants a return delimited list of the values that you want. So I want values 2, 7, and 9. I want 2, 3, and 4, you know, whichever values you want from the list. Insert text. I use this in, there's something similar in a script in Starting Point's emailing solution. Basically just to insert text. I usually, one of the parameters I'll put in here is the cursor position, wherever your cursor currently is in a field, and it'll insert text into whatever you pass in. So I've got my
That's really useful.
The third position, put in the word long, my long sentence. Yeah, okay. That one's really cool. Plural to singular uses a custom function I found off of Brian Dunning's root keywords. And it basically will plural to singular, queries to query, invoices to invoice, you know, works on plurals. That's an awesome one.
Get out of here. For my virtual tabs, I have a singular versus plural parameter.
Oh,
the idea that
no.
could just be a function there that does it for you.
It's pretty accurate. I've tried it on like most words, or not, I guess I shouldn't say most words, but like, you know, the IESs and, you know, try to things like that.
You just spent a week
Into the
straight
Y.
typing in
Yeah,
words
just
out of a
dump a whole-
dictionary.
I got to keep Megan busy somehow. Quarter will return the current quarter that a date is in. So April is in quarter 2, December is in quarter 4, and so on and so forth. For repeat text, I found this one on Brian Dunning again. That will repeat text a certain number of times based on the parameters. Reverse values will just reverse a list in the opposite order that it was in. Root keywords, I only use this one for plural to singular. No other really use for it that I found. It's cool. Play around with it. SQL field and SQL table, we touched on this a little bit earlier. I did try to get this to work. One thing about a lot of my functions that involve field names is that if you actually use them, just instead of me opening up the data viewer, I'm just going to type in here quick. If I did get field name without table occurrence, I can't just put in contact's name first. I need to put in get field name, because the parameter is the field name, not the field. And that's on a lot of these different functions. That's kind of an important note. I tried to get past that issue here, but it only works if you are in the context of whatever field you are trying to use. If I'm trying to reference a field that's not related to the current table that I'm on, it's not going to work, even if it's in a custom function. It needs to be wrapped in get field name. Street format I use for addresses. I've got kind of an example here. Basically, all it does is propers the entire thing. But if you have something like northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, it'll capitalize it. That's pretty much all that one does. But it does use text strip. Text strip is very cool. I use it for basically every field that a user can type in, I will put text strip on. So my notes field has an auto enter calculated value that I uncheck this box on to do not replace. And it's just text strip of self. That will remove any leading or trailing spaces, carriage returns, or tabs from the field. And it will remove any formatting. So if you copy something from an email and it's a larger font size and it's a different font size, larger text, it's underlined and it's red, and you paste it into a field, it will remove all of that formatting for you. So I use text strip, like I said, on literally every single inputable field. I apply that. I'm going to move on to the next section here. Substitute variables and list is a very cool one. I would recommend reading through it to get more information on it. I can go on that for a couple of minutes. I just wanted to touch on the file ones before we wrap up, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get into the JSON ones today. But again, they're all commented, and if anyone does have any questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. But base table names uses SQL basically to return a list of all of these values, these tables, the tables that are in your FileMaker file. Is hosted file returns true if you have a file that's hosted on the server. File prefix, I kind of stole this from Nick. It's got a great shortcut for when you're trying to export a file to the server, or trying to save a PDF. I've used it before, and it's basically the prefix. You'll do like this and then add the temporary documents path, or not temporary, just the get documents path, and then wherever your file is. I did have to add in the Ubuntu, since I found out that system platform is 8, and I've had to do some research as to what the prefix was for Linux servers. Get FMP URL and get WebDirect URL are pretty cool. It will basically, well, this is of course a local file, but it'll give you the URL format for basically you can run this function, copy that URL, paste it into your web browser, and go to WebDirect. And I've used that for like sending an email to a client who just got login information and needs to use WebDirect or something like that. And then last one, and we'll close off, tables with field. This function I have noticed runs kind of slow. You don't want to run it in loops, but it definitely gets the job done and it's not too slow. It uses SQL, and you don't need to know SQL to use it. But if you pass in a field name, it will return a return delimited list of all of the tables that have that field. So if I go to manage database, we could see I've got the G search field in here. I've got the type field in here. It'll return the table names, but only for tables that have that field. I'll use that for writing like my startup script. I'll set a bunch of global fields for the GID user who's logged in a bunch of fields and loop over that to make sure all those tables get set. But yeah, that's a cool one. There's definitely some cool custom functions in here that are worth playing around with. And if anyone has any comments or questions, feel free to reach out anytime. I really appreciate everyone stopping by and checking it out. It's fun to be back. Yes.
I'm going to ask 2 questions before I let you go, unless you have to leave immediately. Do you have to leave like right now, Jake?
No, I don't have. I feel bad going over, but I've got all day.
No, this is why I have the stream not shut off for an hour after. We don't ever let it go for an hour, but it definitely tries. So I'm going to ask 2 questions, quick follow-up. When the file opens, is it going to install plugins?
It does not automatically install any plugins. I actually didn't even put a startup script on this file. It's pretty bare bones. It's just kind of got the records in it, and you can, what it does is when you copy a function, it runs a base elements function to copy that custom function to your clipboard. Otherwise, you could feel free to go into, manage custom functions. I would recommend using 2 different versions of FileMaker, so then you can have one of them open and looking at your custom functions and another one looking through this demo. You can go through, copy the name, copy the parameters, copy the function itself, and paste each one on in there and do it manually if you don't have base elements. But no, in short, base elements isn't required. It's not going to automatically install that for you. It'll just make things a little bit easier if you want to install them into your files.
Cool. There you go, Lynn. And then the last question, I'm going to do students. I'm curious whether the example file interacts with the actual CF dialog box, or is the interface used only to copy the CF to allow the user developer to paste into the CF dialog box?
Correct. It copies the XML to your clipboard. So shout out to Kyle Williams here. I've got his developer tools file that helped me make this possible. So basically, it just copies the XML into your clipboard as a custom function so that FileMaker knows what to do with it. So copy, and then you can go into your file, manage custom functions. And then I'm just going to hit Command V, paste, and there it is. Yep, just copies it for you. Doesn't actually throw it in there.
There you go, Stu. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. With that being said, hopefully we'll have you back on for the stream at some point, Jake. Seriously.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
People are very excited about this stuff. So thank you again. And also thank you again for Christian for popping up to help ask questions.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. Thank you guys for having me. It's always fun.
Oh, couldn't have done without you, Jake. Thank you for coming and doing this.
It is his file after all.
I know.
And it looks like from this buzz, you're going to have to come back and dive into more details than those others, which I would also really like. You showed this to me a few times, but I'd like to see an application like maybe you can walk us through the steps. I'll just throw this out, people can buzz or whatnot. But if I were, again, had my own file and I wanted to add some of the stuff you have, how would I go about, what are the steps I would take to add something like that in there?
To add, like, if you find custom functions in here that you like and you want to install them, how would you go about doing that?
Well, specifically, I think related to some of those like error capture type things that you showed us. I mean, I'm seeing Lynn and Mark, whatnot. People are really kind of curious about that. So,
man, thinking back on it, I probably could have made it easier to grab these required functions, because probably what I would do right now if I were to try to do it into one of my solutions is I'd take a pen and paper and I'd write down, okay, required functions is valid JSON, get script ID. Okay, that one doesn't have any
if they were a
required
portal
functions,
and you
get
selected them from your list of existing records, it probably could use logic to go figure out how to grab all of them, and then if they were changing the name, then want to break it.
It totally could. I didn't think
if you could just spend more of your spare time to make us free tools totally better, that'd be great.
See, that's the thing. I always end up building these cool things, then I become a perfectionist about it. But then you point out stuff to me and I have to become more perfectionist about it and gotta make it even, gotta really
you know what,
nail it
getting
down.
things to the finish line to come and share, though, is such a big step. So many engineers, talented and whatnot, they love to start things. Finishing is hard. And then the other thing that's really hard is drawing a line in which you say, I'm going to share this now, because it's never really finished. But getting to that line to actually come and bring things forward, that's a big one. And I think everyone appreciates it, even with the flaws that they have in them. And trust me, when I go to show people some of my tools, I'm like, I gotta fix this, I gotta fix that. But as Amy Scheele said, what spare time?
Yeah.
What is that?
I would say one easy way to start with the error capturing portion is just to get the capture error and get error description functions. Install those two into your file, and then add it to a script and debug the script and see what happens. Watch your data viewer, see what happens to your variables as they're getting set. See that error get set, see that last error get set. See how you can handle your errors using that. And then at the end of a script, if you want to take that next step and try that capture script details, it's going to take everything that you captured during that script and throw it into that one scripts variable. What I'll usually do is I'll have a data viewer watch ready that has that scripts variable. I've got JSON format elements, that $$ scripts, and there is my array of all the scripts that I've run today. And that's not always going to be the most useful information. The most useful information is probably going to be that result. But seeing that one script at a time can be helpful if you're, especially like Christian said, if you're doing PSOS. That's the whole reason I built this, was because I was doing PSOS and I needed to capture the results of what was happening on the server. And I'm not logged into the server. I can't open up the script debugger. So I tried to replicate the script debugger as well as I can, find the points in which there are stress and capture what's happening at those points and send those results back to myself.
Great job, Jake. Great job. I'm looking forward to you come back with some of those others, but like I said, I think that you're very sharp with how you're able to build this structure and rinse and repeat it, and then it just gets better over time. So I'm sure everyone else out there, from what I can see, really appreciates you.
Yes. No, seriously, thank you very much. People are very excited. We had a couple people say like, oh, I needed this custom function today. So.
Oh, cool. Hey, hope you guys get some good use out of it. And if anyone has any cool suggestions for other custom functions you feel like belong in here, feel free to share them with us, and we'll be happy to see what you got and
collect them into the great custom function.
Sharing this
make sure you put your name in the comments and date it, and then if it goes wrong, we know who to blame. If any of these go wrong, you know who to blame. So you've got. You guys have any problems with these? You can call me. Well, don't call me.
Put your home number.
I'll respond to an email in 3 to 5 business days.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
individual up here who maybe a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir.